Today I'm going to walk you through a very beginner-friendly mini landscape. We'll start off by drawing a horizon line about 2/3 of the way down your paper. I'm using a very small paper here. It's 2.5 by 2.5. I've wet the entire area for the sky, and then just along the horizon line in short little dashes, I'm using the cadmium red pale hue. And then I'm cleaning off my brush and I'm picking up some of that cerulean blue, which is really bright and beautiful, and running that along the very top of the painting. And then you can let the water do the work, bringing that blue and that very pale red together at the center. When that dries, you'll still be able to see a bit of the paper showing through there, and it creates a really beautiful, glowy sunset effect. After cleaning off the brush and wetting down the ground so that it has a really nice sheen of water on it, I'm mixing up some of the sap green, and I'm using the side of this angled brush to start laying in some of the grass. I still have a bit of water on my brush at this point. You can tell from the darker little drops of water. Those kind of settle into the paper as it dries, which you can see here. It's all melded together. Now I'm switching to a size 2 round brush, making sure that that has clean water on it. I've also listed all of the supplies that I'm using in the description below. I'm picking up a little bit more of that sap green and mixing it up. I also have some viridian green in that mixing well that I'm using, and I'm also adding some cadmium yellow. I'm doing that because I want to start adding different shades of green than the one I first laid down. This one is slightly darker in value and it has a little bit more yellow to it. And then I'm swiping that gently over areas that still have the paper showing through. The paper is dry at this point, so the color won't spread out very much. This helps you add a little bit more variety in the green and starts building those layers. And then I'm picking up more of that viridian so that it's more of a blue-green, and I'm using that for along the horizon line. I'll also start building up some of the bushes and trees that you see along the horizon line. I'm extending it down a little bit as well into that yellow-green that we put on the paper. And since that yellow-green is still damp, those colors will mesh together a little bit. Not as much as if it were true wet on wet, but they will blend softly together and create a really beautiful effect. Now for the trees and bushes in the background, I'm using more of the point of the brush and then just altering how I'm laying the brush down onto the paper. I'm adding a little bit of the burnt umber into the mix as well and going back over this to add a little bit more dimension and depth with a slightly deeper, darker value. It starts giving the illusion of texture even on a 2D surface. Now I'm rinsing off my brush, first in the rinse water and then in the clean water, and then blotting that off on a paper towel. You could also use a cloth for that. And then I've let the painting dry completely because I want to come back in and lay down some more color, and I want it to stand on its own as opposed to melding into those previous layers that we've already done. I'm picking up a little bit of the burnt umber and the sap green. This is the Winsor & Newton Cotman set, which is great for beginners. It's a very accessible price point, and the colors are nice and saturated. When I first started laying down that color, it was a little too brown, so I added a little bit more sap green to the mix. And then I'm going back in and focusing mostly along that horizon line. I want this to have a darker value than the rest of the painting because I want it to create the point of focus and have a little bit more contrast compared to the sky and the rest of the ground. I'm using short little dashes with the tip of the brush here. It creates a little bit more of a detailed look. And then I'm concentrating a little bit more of the volume on each side of the painting, especially over here on the right side. It's a little bit taller and wider, and then thinning it out toward the center of the painting. And again, on the left side, you can see I've got more of a triangular shape, slightly shorter than over on the right side. That asymmetry gives it a little bit more visual interest as well. Next, I am cleaning off the brush again and picking up a bit more of the Viridian green. This has a little bit more of a blue base to it. I'm using that to continue darkening the trees and bushes along that horizon line. Usually in watercolor, you want to be working from light to dark. Of course, there are always exceptions, but as a general rule, that's good to keep in mind. And we are definitely using that here in this painting. And then I'm continuing to dab that deeper color into the trees. And then I'm adding a little bit more water to my brush here and still keeping that same blue-green color. And I'm using that to smooth along a bit of the ground, mostly along each of the sides and then up along that horizon line. This creates a bit of a visual echo with what's happening in the sky. There's a nice curve to the sunset in the sky, and then we're mimicking that down here on the ground by creating a similar curve. Having a little bit more water on your brush at this point encourages the paint and the color to spread around a little bit more than it was doing when we were working on the trees. And then I'm cleaning off the brush again, making sure all of the color is out of there. Then you can remove the washi tape that was used to create a nice clean border. And your beautiful painting is complete. I hope you are very proud of it. My name is Sarah, and I hope you'll join me again soon for another tutorial.